Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to our session today. My name is Matthew Roche. I'm a Senior Program Manager on the SQL Server Integration Services team at Microsoft. I'd like to talk to you today about some of the new things that are coming in integration services in SQL Server 2012. Even though there is a lot of information and a lot of new capabilities, we're not going to have the time to cover all of them. We're going to focus on a specific scenario, really looking at how team-based development can be enhanced and improved and made easier with some of these new capabilities. So, for our release, we targeted two specific areas of improvement, the two pillars that we focused on for new features, new capabilities, and improvements to existing features. The first one was focused on an improved development experience. When you're building your packages, when you're building your integration services solutions, how can we make that process more efficient, easier, and less painful? Our second area of improvement was on the administration experience. Deployment, monitoring, execution. How can we make those common tasks easier, more reliable, and more manageable in general? So again, we can't look at all of the new capabilities, but let's start off with a look at some of the new developer experience enhancements that are coming in SQL Server 2012. I realize that the text, even though we're not listing everything here, the text on these slides may be a little bit small. You can download them from the site, so if you'd like to read along, that's great as well. One of the first things that you'll notice as we start developing with integration services in SQL Server 2012 is that the development experience is based on Visual Studio 2010 and it's based on .NET 4.0 as well. If you're using the script task or script component in your data flow, then you'll be able to use the full capabilities both of Visual Studio 2010 for your scripting environment and the capabilities of the .NET 4.0 platform for the scripts that you're writing as well. We've got a lot of designer improvements. There's a new WPF-based design surface, so it looks better, it's smoother. We've got smooth scaling, scrolling, zooming, and so on. We also have improved undo and redo and copy and paste, both in the control flow and data flow designers. Under the hood, we have an improved XML format. So if you've ever right-clicked on a package and chosen View Code in the past, the XML that you've seen has not been the easiest to work with. We've completely revised that XML format, both to make it lighter weight and more human-readable, and to make it easier for operations such as diffing and merging if you're using tools like SourceSafe or Team Foundation Server. So we also have made it easier to make our make our packages more self-documenting. Annotations are improved, and we have decorations for anytime you place an expression on a task property or a connection manager, that task or that connection manager will have an icon placed next to it to show there is a dynamic functionality under the hood, just making the package more discoverable, more self-documenting. There's better tools in the control flow and the data flow, such as a new data column mapper. So if you're mapping between input columns for one component and output columns from an upstream component, you'll then have the ability to do so more easily. One of the great shortcuts is you can copy from there into Excel. I know that a lot of large data warehouse projects have hundreds of columns passing through. Excel is a tool that a lot of our customers have said they would prefer to use for that work. We've really enabled that scenario as well as many others. One of the things that we've done as well is we've included new change data capture components for control flow and data flow. So if your source system supports CDC, getting only that delta, only the data that's changed into your data warehouse is now simpler than it's ever been before. This is something that we'll focus on, we'll take a look at when we go into the demos, so we won't spend too much time there. Also in the data flow, we've got integration with the new data quality services, which is shipping in SQL Server 2012, as well as better tool support all around, improved windows for variables, for expressions. We have a new toolbox, which is easier to manage, and we are hooking in with the auto recovery capabilities of Visual Studio. So if something should go wrong, if Visual Studio were to go down, you'll have your packages and your projects saved as part of the Visual Studio autosave as well, or auto recover. So a lot of capabilities beyond what's listed here. We're sort of touching the tops of the waves, but we've really gone as far as we can to ensure that your development experience is going to be smoother and more productive than it's ever been before. The other area where we've made significant improvements is in the admin experience. If you take a look at the slide in front of you, we won't be touching on all of these bullets, but most of them are enabled by our new project deployment model and the new integration services server. In previous versions of integration services, you could deploy to the file system or to the MSDB database, and it was really your choice for which you would deploy to. Even though those are still supported, starting with SQL Server 2012, you can now deploy to the integration services server in what we call the catalog. The catalog is a relational database, so it's stored in an instance of SQL Server, and when you deploy, your packages and the projects that contain them are uploaded into the SSAS-DB database, the catalog itself, where there are views, tables, stored procedures, and both a T-SQL API, a .NET API, and a PowerShell API for doing monitoring, management, and execution of those packages. When you use this model, a lot of things that you had to develop by hand in previous versions of integration services come as a side effect or as a benefit of using this model. This includes things like monitoring. When a package is executed, it will automatically log its events into tables in the catalog database. Or management, so you can secure your packages, you can get specific versions of the packages back out of the catalog using Management Studio, using the T-SQL API, using the tools of your choice. In addition to that, because it is integrated into Management Studio, you've got a great management experience there. For most things that you can do using SQL Server Management Studio, just as you would with a lot of traditional relational engine operations, you can use a graphical user interface, use the dialogues inside of Management Studio to make a change, and then script that as Transact SQL into a query window or into a clipboard, so you can easily repeat it or parameterize it and reuse it. So one of the additional things that we're shipping separate from the catalog is a new CDC service for Oracle. Traditionally, SQL Server CDC has only worked with SQL Server 2008 or later databases for the data source. With the CDC for Oracle service, you can take advantage of the same change data capture capabilities even if your source data is in an Oracle database. So what we're going to see during the demo using the CDC components for control flow and data flow, even though we don't stress this in the demo, the data sources for this functionality can be based in Oracle or in SQL Server. We've got a new PowerShell API, we've got enhanced configurability support, so you don't need to use configurations anymore. We have parameters and environments that provide that same sort of functionality. So with no further ado, let's actually jump into the demo and see exactly how we would use these capabilities as part of a day in the life of an integration services team. So we've got a variety of things that we'll do, and it's a relatively short demo. We've got maybe 15 or 20 minutes in the demo, but we're going to go through and we're going to see package development, we're going to see CDC, we're going to see deployment, we're going to see monitoring, we're going to see one of my personal favorite features, which are data taps, which allow you to connect up to a package that's been deployed to see the data that's passing through a given path in the data flow. So let's jump on into that demo now. So let's jump right into Visual Studio and take a look at what we're working with. So instead of trying to look at every new feature that we've introduced in integration services in SQL Server 2012, instead we'll look at a day in the life of an integration services development team and see how some of these new features make their lives easier. So first of all, we'll look at the project itself. There are a few things that probably leap out at you. First one is we've got this project under source control. So we either have the checked out icons or the locked icons to show that they're checked in for all of our packages and other project files. Since this is a team development effort, we're following best practices and using Team Foundation Server as our source control so that we can have multiple developers working together without needing to worry about changes being lost or overwritten. Probably also notice that we have new project level connection managers. So these are connection managers that can be defined at the project level, used in any package inside the project, as well as project level parameters so that we can pass in values once for the project as a whole and have them available to any package inside the project. And of course, these are going to be available both here in Visual Studio for development and after we deploy these packages up to the SSAS server. You probably see that we have 3 different packages that are checked out. These are the ones that we're actively working on today. So Notice as well, even though our master package has a whole bunch of execute package tasks, there are no file or SQL Server connections to reference the child packages. Because we are using the new project deployment model, we can use a project reference and simply specify the name of the package that we're referencing. We don't need an absolute path to the project file, be it on the file system or in the database. So what we're doing today is taking this existing project that we've developed, we're adding some CDC or change data capture functionality to it. So when we are working with CDC, typically we will have two different patterns or two different processes that we need to support. One of them is the initial data load, when we pull in the base set of data from the source system and push it into our destination, typically a data warehouse. The other one is an incremental load, where we trickle feed just that data that's been changed into the data warehouse. Now, CDC is not new in SQL Server 2012. This was introduced in SQL Server 2008, but new in integration services for 2012, we have a set of control flow and data flow components that will allow us or allow package developers to much more easily integrate CDC into their packages. So here in our control flow for our initial load, we have a CDC control task. We've got two of them. So one is to mark the fact that we are starting our initial load. The other one is to mark that we have completed the initial load, so before and after our data flow task that does the actual load itself. Let's take a look at one of these. There are a few things that I want to point out here to show how easy this is to set up. The first one is we're specifying our control operation. There are a few standard operations that we'll need when implementing CDC inside our package. We're marking either the start or, for the other one, the end of our initial load. We're specifying where inside our package we are storing our CDC state, so we've got this variable that we're specifying. Where inside a database, where are we storing this state to persist it both during and after package execution, and because we could have multiple packages running concurrently, what state are we storing? So this is for our contacts or for our people. And this is all very easy to set up. It's, again, stuff that you would typically used to have to do manually using execute SQL tasks or the like. But for our initial load, let's right-click and choose execute. This is going to go through, truncate the information in our destination in case there was something in there already, mark the fact that we are loading it, push those changes down, and then mark the fact that we've got them done. So sort of a one-time operation. What about for the data that's been changing or that will be changing in our source system as we move forward? So here, actually let me go back into the control flow. Here we'll see that we've got the same basic pattern. So before our data flow, we're using another CDC control task. In this case, our operation is get processing range, essentially saying go out and look in those CDC tables in the database to find what data is new, what has changed, and to say this is where we're starting. When it's done, our operation is going to be mark processed range. Here's the data that we have loaded in, but the data flow is honestly where the interesting stuff is going on. In addition to that CDC control task or control flow task, we have a CDC source component and a CDC splitter transformation. The CDC source is probably the most interesting thing in that it allows us to target that CDC-enabled table, where are we pulling the data from, and the processing mode. We won't get into all of the details here just for the sake of time, but we could get all changes. We could get all changes, including the old values. What we're interested in here is just the net changes. So get us the most recent data. So if between multiple package executions, a given record has been updated twice, for example, for this example, we're only concerned with the final state or the most recent net changes. So we then have this CDC splitter transformation. This is similar to a conditional split, but it has the logic built in to look at that data coming out of the CDC source and the CDC tables to say, has a given record been inserted, updated, or deleted? And it's got three outputs for these three different states. And for our logic, we've got a destination for inserts, and then OLADB command transforms to handle either the updates or the deletes. So let's jump over here into our SQL Server Management Studio and simulate some changes going on against our OLTP system. I'm going to highlight this insert statement. We're going to run that. And essentially what we're doing here is we're simulating 7 new hires. We've got 7 new records that we're inserting into this contact table inside our AdventureWorks database. So we've got new records. Let's go and run our incremental package. So we're going to right click, we're going to choose execute, and we'll see, notice that there's no data coming in. The actual operation inside the CDC capabilities inside the database, it's a scheduled run, so often there is a delay from the time that the data is changed in the base table to the time that it's available in the CDC table. So I guess I'm talking a little bit too quickly. Let me right click and run this guy again. We'll see those changes come through. So we've got 7 records coming out of the CDC source, and we'll see that all 7 of them are coming to this insert output as well, since we're only having inserts in the data. So let's come back into Management Studio and we'll see what else we have going on. So one of our new hires, Jeff Hay, he's earned his PhD, so congratulations, Jeff. Let's run an update. We'll get that in there. So we're updating his title, so he will now show up in our systems as Dr. Jeff Hay. So it's a pretty big accomplishment. Let's come back in, and again, we'll execute our package. Cross your fingers that we have delayed long enough for these changes. We certainly have. 1 row coming from the source, automatically going down to the update output, the update path. So we'll exit out there. Of course, interesting things are always going on. Jeff really seems to be taking this new accomplishment seriously, so he wants more recognition. He wants to be Dr. Jeff Hay, PhD, so we'll update the suffix in his system. But just a couple minutes later, we got an email from Jeff saying he's accepted a position with another company, so we're going to take him out of our contacts table. So sorry to see you go, Jeff. Good luck in your new adventures. We'll delete this guy. Now think about what we've just done here. We have taken a record, we've updated it, so that's 1 transaction against our database. And then we've deleted it, a second transaction affecting the same records in the database. Let's come back into our package and remember that our CDC source component, this is configured to only load in the net changes. So what will we see when we execute our package? Even though there was 1 delete and 1 update, we're only going to see the most recent. We're only going to see that delete when the package executes. If our business logic dictated otherwise, we could specify all changes so that we would see both the update and the delete if that was what we wanted. So these new components support this, the logic that's required for a variety of CDC scenarios. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to incorporate this incremental load into our master flows. So I will come down here, grab an execute package task, come in to configure it. We'll choose a project reference because it's part of the same project. We'll choose our incremental package. We will notice that there is a parameter bindings tab here as well. If this child package had parameters, we could pass them in here. There's no need for parent package variable configurations anymore. We'll save our changes. Oh, and let's actually go in and take a look at something. Remember how we have a new XML format for our packages? This is going to allow us to much more easily do comparisons or diffing for our packages. So we right-click and choose Compare. We're looking against the most recent version that's in source control. We can very easily see both individual properties that have changed for the package and the fact that we have added, so here's what's in control, over here on the right is the new stuff that we've added. We've added a new executable. We see that this is our execute package task that we've added. Even though this is probably going to remain an advanced or expert operation, this also enables merge scenarios as well. So if you have 2 different developers who have made changes to the same package, because the XML format is much simpler and more human readable, as well as simplified, we now have the ability to support merging packages as well. So we've got this saved. Let's check this back in. So we'll say ready to deploy and check in. We've got it back into source control. So all of our changes are tracked. If we were using issue tracking as well, we could update the tasks that we were assigned and have this, this change set or this check-in associated with it. But all that we're going to do right now is deploy our project up to our server. I'm going to right-click on the project and choose Deploy. This is going to launch our new deployment wizard. Keep in mind as well that even though we're launching this from Visual Studio, this is something that can be automated, done from the command line, and integrated into an automated deployment process. When a project is built, there is a new .ispac or IcePack file that contains all of the packages, all of the settings, and all of the metadata related to the project. This deployment wizard will work with those files to allow easy automated deployments. But right now, let's jump back over into Management Studio. I'm going to resize my windows just a little bit here and zoom in to take a look at our Integration Services Catalog node. This is going to show up inside Object Explorer, and we can say that we've got our catalog. We can create folders inside it to organize our projects and packages however we want. We have a folder for each project, and then inside the project we can see all of the packages that are part of it. We also have, as I expand this guy out, a new folder called Environments. An environment in the Integration Services Catalog is essentially a collection of variables and values assigned to them. One of the packages inside our project is a parts package, which will load in from a text file instead of from a relational database. Depending on which supplier we're getting data from for a given execution, we might want to load from one location or another. So these environments are going to supply values that will allow us to do this more easily. So as I right-click on a package and choose Execute, we're going to get our new Execute Package dialog. This parts list location parameter is marked in our project as being required. This essentially says that when we go to execute a package that uses this parameter, we must supply a value at execution time. This eliminates or at least reduces the risk of having a package execute in your production environment with values that were set and only appropriate in a development or test environment. So we can select from the various environments. Our message has gone away. Notice that we can also specify values for any connection managers and specify advanced properties as well. We can then choose OK. We can also, notice this guy up here, I can choose to script my execution to a new query window. So you're used to doing this for other things inside SQL Server Management Studio. With the new Integration Services Catalog, we have a Transact SQL API for execution, validation, and management of packages, as well as monitoring and logging. So here we can create an execution, set whatever parameters, and then start that execution and do this all from a T-SQL script without any additional work required. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to execute this from the GUI. I'm going to choose OK, and it's going to come up and saying, hey, we've started this execution. Do you want to see the overview report? In Management Studio, we have a bunch of built-in reports. The overview report is going to allow us to see, for a given execution, how is it going? Notice that our status is running. Notice the last time we ran this package, it had failed. I'm going to refresh my package as well, or refresh the report as well, rather. I notice that the status has failed. I'm probably going to have to drill in to see what the problem is. Perhaps I should have tested that incremental CDC package before I deploy that out to the server. But let's think about troubleshooting. So one of the things that is very common in ETL environments is to have a package that executes successfully in one environment, doesn't execute successfully in another, or where the data that is being passed through the package is causing it to fail. So intermittent or unpredictable failure after deployment. One of the new features that we've added into integration services in SQL Server 2012 is the feature of data taps. A data tap is essentially a deployment time data viewer, where a data viewer is only available inside Visual Studio, so it doesn't help you after you've deployed your package. But a data tap allows you to specify the execution. So notice the T-SQL here. It's essentially what I generated from the SQL Server Management Studio GUI, and I've added one line to it to say, call the catalog.addDataTap stored procedure. We're specifying the execution ID, which we got from our template T-SQL, and we're then going to specify for this data flow task, and for this path inside the data flow, take any data that goes through this and dump it into this CSV file in our data dumps folder. And then we start the execution. So let's run this guy. We get back our execution ID, and then when we go to look in our data dumps folder, we have a CSV file, and any record that passes through here is going to get dumped into this file. We're using CSV because it's very easy to use. It may be a little bit bigger than something like a raw file, but usually when you're diagnosing a problem, the ease of diagnostic is more important than the performance of the troubleshooting steps. So we've got this here, which will allow us to, without modifying the package, which might be prohibited or difficult based on our corporate policies or other restrictions, we can simply say for this package execution or for multiple executions, take this path or these paths, dump the information out to these files, which will allow us to much more easily diagnose and troubleshoot and resolve problems with packages after they've been deployed. So in this demo, we've seen a wide variety of things, trying to focus on team development. We've seen how we're using Visual Studio 2010. We've seen some of the new capabilities inside our project model, such as shared connection managers and parameters. We've seen the TFS integration. We've seen the new CDC capabilities. We've seen how easy the deployment is. And after deployment, we've seen some of the capabilities of our new catalog, both for deployment, monitoring via reports, as well as troubleshooting via data tap. So let's jump back into our PowerPoint and wrap things up. So now that we've seen the demo, we've seen a lot of the capabilities that are coming in integration services in SQL Server 2012. Now take advantage of the additional resources that are out there. In addition to the technical learning and training capabilities that are on the Virtual Academy website, you can also now download a free trial of SQL Server 2012 and engage with the community. There's a lot of resources out there. The integration services team can't wait to hear what you think about the work that we've done for this release. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the show.